here officially. I messed it up the first time. I was commenting on you're in David Aardsma in 4K. I could see every bit of facial hair. Yeah. Beautiful setup you have there for your MLB Network Radio show, and we're co-opting it for this terrible podcast. Thank you for coming on, David Aardsma. I was looking at your career because I followed you. I said this in a text and you never responded, so I assume that it weirded you out. That's my only possible thing. You were playing at Rice. Your junior season, the year you got drafted, I was a junior in high school, and I was watching those teams very closely. And I pitched in high school. I remember watching you. I forgot Phil Humber was on that team. That's how good that team was, is because he was like the third best starter on the team that year, and you were the closer for that Rice championship team. And I've known about you forever, for like so long. And it's crazy to me to imagine that something happened to allow me to have you on this podcast.
I didn't ignore the text, to be honest. I'm just really bad at text messaging. And I look back and I just think about it. I'm like, so when I close out my text, I have 325. I got 325 unread text messages and about 47,000 unread emails.
Yeah.
So I'm up there on I got to be in the top 1% on all that. And I actually feel bad. So we were talking before you started recording, the jersey. I got to think like,
yeah.
I usually rock a Mariners jersey, and I got my Mariners jersey up there, and because it's my favorite jersey, my first jersey.
Yeah.
But this one is so cool. When I was on the Braves, like that's our 4th of July jersey. They had the World Series Braves. I think that was at the 96 Braves there for their, their comeback thing. So I had all of the 96 Braves sign it. Wow. And the Braves when I was on the team. So that's like 2 whole teams all signed one jersey.
That's so crazy. So that's like you're like one. Glavin, Smoltz, Maddox, obviously, and then like what? Millwood's probably on that team.
Avery.
Oh my God.
Avery's on that team, and then then you go through the lineup and you got
the lineup's
Drones. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Is Andrew Jones on that team at that point?
I think he was.
Yeah. Okay. He's one of my guys that's like you have to get that guy in the Hall of Fame. Should be a Hall of Famer, and we can't just let him getting fat at the end of his. If getting fat in your 30s, nothing should be more relatable to baseball writers than getting fat in your 30s, frankly.
Right. I don't understand when they watched him back then. What were they missing now on the voting? Like we knew he was the most dynamic athlete probably around that time. Yeah. Defensive, offensive. He kind of did everything. He just never had the numbers that would probably just relate to just a Hall of Fame number. But when we look at it, we're like, this dude did everything, and every team in the league would have said, please, for the next 10 years, give me some Andrew Jones. That's why I don't understand is compared to his time, he was viewed as the guy, the center fielder.
When Ken Griffey Jr. got traded out of Seattle, which was like a devastating moment in my life, originally there were a couple teams that he was considering going to. He got to pick. He had 10-5 rights. Got to pick wherever he went, and the Braves were on the list. And it was a legit chance you could get Andrew Jones straight up. That's how good he was. Is prime Ken Griffey Jr. That was a rumor. Is Andrew Jones straight up for Ken Griffey Jr. And obviously Jr.'s career falls apart after that, and Andrew Jones continues to be productive. But yeah, that dude. I remember watching him on SportsCenter, one like top plays. And I watched it. I watched SportsCenter, and then I watched SportsCenter again, just like 2 times in a row. Like back then there was no.
Dude.
Yeah, and I remember watching this play, and it's not even a play that's memorable in his career. I've never even been able to find it. This is how many great plays that dude made. It's a line drive into the gap, and I'm like, oh, there's no way he's getting to that ball. And then he somehow, out of nowhere, full-length dive, like not these dives that are like for show. This is like full laid out, landed on his ribcage dive, makes this catch on a line drive in the gap. I'm watching it an hour later, and I have the same experience with it. There's no way he's getting to this ball. Even though I've seen it already, he just was like such an incredible defender and a very good hitter also.
Yes, very great hitter, great defender, great everything. I've never heard a bad thing about him as a teammate. And I don't get it, man. These voters, They don't know what they're doing.
Get it together, voters.
I have such a problem with the Hall of Fame voting. It bothers me. It irks me to my core.
I'm with you. So I have another one, and I'd like to hear who you think are the biggest snubs. Because I'm from the Seattle area, grew up a Mariners fan. Out here, we revere Ichiro, right? You have to. It's like part of the rules of living in Seattle. Can't say a bad word about Ichiro, Felix Hernandez, Julio Rodriguez now. Griffey, you got to say some bad things after he left. But Kenny Lofton had a better Major League Baseball career than Ichiro, in my opinion, and got like less than 1% of the Hall of Fame vote in his. He wasn't even eligible for the next year of voting.
I look back at Kenny Lofton too, and I do have a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of guys that are just like a one and done. Albert Bell's an interesting one because a lot of his numbers that you put up, I get it. Like he's a steroid question, right?
Sure.
I don't think he was ever on any list or anything directly connected, but it's like, come on, man, we
got to grow up with that. Like everybody was doing it. Grow up.
And here's the thing: is there's guys in the Hall of Fame that have done stuff. There's guys in the Hall of Fame that had questions. Like we can't look back and say David Ortiz, for how great of a ball player he was, and I loved him as a teammate, and I loved everything about him. The dude was David Arias, age issues, question about his name, and connected with steroids, and everything about it. And now he's in the Hall of Fame. And there's also been a lot of other guys. And so we look back and go, dude, get over the Hall of Fame stuff. I always viewed it this is two ways. There's a Hall of Fame and there's a museum. The Hall of Fame is for the best players as long as you were with the rules and whatever rules they had to get in. Let the museum tell the story. Tell the story of the entire generation that there was this. We don't know who was. We don't know who wasn't. There's speculation. But a lot of records all got broken in this one giant gap of like 20 whatever years, and then just let it be and look back at those guys like Sammy Sosa, Palmeiro, Clemens, Bonds, who's the best ball player I have ever laid my eyes on. There are baseball players, and then there's Bonds, and it's when a lot of baseball players talk about him, it's like, no, he doesn't count. It's like there's him. That doesn't count. Everybody else. Now let's talk about everybody else.
Yeah, and it's also, especially those guys, I mean, Bonds to a lesser degree, but Sosa, McGuire, Palmeiro is in those years too. Saved baseball. Like the baseball's coming off of this, like these strike shortened seasons. You lose a World Series, and these guys reinvigorate interest for young people. And I grew up playing baseball. Baseball's my favorite sport. People like me, they don't need to convince, right? Like, but the whole world was interested in baseball for a couple months in, the early fall of 1998, and they owe it to those guys.
Chicks did the long ball. Just straight up, like they were running commercials. They did it. Ownership knew it. The front Major League Baseball operations knew it. Players knew it. Everybody knew it, and everybody was in. Writers knew it. That's my biggest problem is the writers knew it. And the writers were voting for these guys for Hall of Fame. And the writers weren't bringing up all these arguments and all these issues. They understood what it meant for baseball. I think fans knew what it meant for baseball. We all wanted our players to be pure and genuine, like amazing little flowers growing up in a field. But they're not. And at the end of the day, when the money started changing the game and when Bond started seeing what other guys were doing, and he wanted to compete, and he took it to the new level, and you saw how amazing an athlete he was. It's just get over it. Now, once you change the rules, okay, now we have a conversation. Like, hey, steroids are illegal, PEDs are illegal. Get caught, suck it. Like, I've got no problem with that.
I even feel like, though, someone who had like a steroid scandal today would fare a lot better in Hall of Fame voting 15 years from now than someone who was doing it during a time when it was essentially unregulated by Major League Baseball, and probably to a large degree, like at least at the very minimum, they were looking the other way. It seems like to me.
You want to get in the Hall of Fame, be really good, have a steroid allegation, and just be likable. Just be likable. just like shake hands, kiss babies, be the most likable person in the world. Like that's it. That's all you got to do, because then you'll get in, and no one will care. And that's what happened. And I hate to say it, but David Ortiz, that's what happened. He was the most likable guy with steroid allegations, and no one even batted an eye. No one
Yeah.
even brought it up. Like, oh, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. Of course he's a Hall of Famer. You're like, wait, what? Like, this is the same. You're making the same argument. Like, you're just forgetting about everybody else that you ever talked about.
It wasn't, I mean, Ortiz was like almost unanimous, which was surprising to me, especially because like Edgar Martinez had such a hard time getting in, and Edgar Martinez has no steroid allegations. And by the way, I was fine with Edgar not getting in. I would have been okay with that. I was okay with him getting in. I know I'm an unpopular guy in Seattle for stuff like this. He's the greatest hitter of it. He's the greatest DH of all time. But to me, the DH, it isn't compared to the DH. It's compared to every hitter in baseball. So he had to be one of the greatest hitters of his time. I do think he was, but I understood the argument for him not getting in. But for Ortiz to get in with all of his baggage and not Edgar made no sense to me. So thank God Edgar got in.
I was in 2004 spring training with the Giants. Okay, my rookie. I mean, I was drafted 03, right?
Yep.
So I'm 04. I pitched 18 games in the minors. I'm having this incredible spring training, just dealing. I don't know what I'm doing, but everything's working. Never had a slider in my life. All of a sudden, I got a slider out of hell. And am I allowed to cuss on here, by the way?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay,
The more
good.
cussing, the better.
Fucking A. So I'm sitting there. I'm throwing fucking sliders. I'm throwing heaters at like 97, 98. But I'm feeling it. And this is the same thing I did at Rice when we won the Hall of Fame. Man, I was just feeling it. And we get to Peoria, and I'm playing against the Mariners. And up comes Edgar Martinez. And I'm like, dude, okay. Edgar Martinez. All right, here's my chance, right? This is my spot. So I throw a heater middle up right by him. Just blows his doors open. I'm like, okay. That was my thing. And nowadays people say, well, I had a whole lot of a vertical run. I had great spin rate, vertical approach angle. Everything was perfect for a high fastball. Back then I was like, throw it down. Seekers or ground balls. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know why I can't do it. Now everyone would be praising me. But next one, I'm like, shake off a slider or something. Fastball. Let's do this. Middle up, even a little higher, blow his doors open. I'm like, dude, I'm going to get Edgar Martinez. And I'm like kind of walking around like, I'm about to get that dude. And so shake off another slider, heater up. And I'm like, I got this. And I put that thing above the zone, letter high, should never have hit it. And that motherfucker gets his hands on top of that ball and lines it. And I can still hear like the noise of it coming by my head.
Oh my God.
Right up the middle. And that's when I sat back. I'm like, all right, that's Edgar Martinez. Maybe I shouldn't shake every time.
You're like real life Nuke LaLoosh.
Oh yes, 100%. Like I got this. Oh, come on.
Well, you're kind of an interesting case as a draft pick also, because you were a closer in college, which isn't really the way. I mean, I guess it's probably happening more now, but at a point, closers were like failed starters usually, right? The greatest closers we've ever seen, Eric Gagne, was a failed starter. They tried so hard to make Eric Gagne a starter, and he could never do it. I was looking at your college stats, and you were a closer or a reliever essentially the whole time you were in college, which for a guy like you to get drafted as a career reliever in college is pretty rare.
Yeah, and so also, I mean, Mariano was a failed starter, arm injuries and stuff like that.
Derek Lowe.
Yeah, dude, like the best of the best of the best. We were always like, you're always a starter until you suck, and you're a reliever. That's all I still tell guys. Always be a starter until you can't.
Sure.
Until you suck enough. But I went to high school. High school, I was a starter at Cherry Creek High School in Denver, Colorado. I was a starter. Ended up having an incredible year. Won Player of the Year, all that fun stuff. You go to Penn State. My freshman year, in and out of the rotation, long relief. I was kind of doing everything. I'd make a starter here and there. Go to Rice. I was a starter my sophomore year. And then I started for about 4 or 5 games. I don't know what it was. Doing okay, not great. My problem was great fastball, really no off speed, but just enough where I'd get foul balls. And I wasn't getting like strikeouts, right? I wasn't swings and misses, but my fastball I can get strikeouts, but that's all you know what's coming. So a lot of foul balls. So I couldn't throw deep in the ball games. I'd be throwing 100 pitches by the time I was in the 5th inning or whatever it was, and you're out of the ball game. And so they switched me and Wade Townsend, who was the closer or late reliever, and they switched us. And he just flourished in the role as a starting pitcher, and I just flourished in the role as a reliever. And then my junior year, become the closer, and we ended up going on, win the College World Series. I get drafted 22nd overall. You had I'm trying. God, I can't remember his name. Ryan. We had a closer out of Houston. Ryan Wagner. Wagner got picked very high in the first round. He was a closer out of Houston. And then we had out of Cal State Fullerton, Chad Cordero was also a closer. So we had 3 closers, college closers, drafted in the first round, right? This is crazy. My only goal was to get more money than them, and I did, which is stuck it. But then, Ryan Wagner makes it to the big leagues in 4 games, which was insane.
Yeah.
Chad Cordero made it as a September call-up, and I made it on opening day roster. So we had all 3 closers make the big leagues within 30 some minor league baseball games.
Wow.
And it was absolutely insane. Ryan's career got cut short. Chad had a couple great years with the Nationals, and then he ended up being out of the league, and I ended up kind of continuing. But that's so rare. It's so weird, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one to have 3 taken that early, but 2, to have them taken, have 3 guys that come up as relievers the year after they got drafted. Isn't that crazy? But to have guys that were relievers in college, I wonder if that's ever happened another time.
I can't imagine, but back then, nobody made the big league rosters like that. No one. I made the big league roster at my first spring training, and with the Giants, the last player to do so was Will Clark. And so that's the type of thing, back then, that's what it was. If you made the big league roster without a spring training or your first spring training, it was mind blowing. And so you were treated differently too, because it was all salty veteran teams. I didn't have anybody taking me out to dinner. No one bought me a suit. No one. I was a pariah a little bit. People didn't I don't want to say people didn't like me. I think they didn't like the idea of me.
Yeah.
That this young kid could come up and take somebody's job, a veteran's job. And I had good guys, but I think they sat back and just wanted to see if this experiment was going to work. And it didn't, the first year, because you're, young and not speed stuff, but eventually did.
Yeah.
And I'll never take that experience back, but I think they were crazy for bringing me up.
Well, I'm curious if you had any of that, I think I played baseball in high school. My high school team was pretty good, but not we had a couple guys that played in college, a couple guys that probably would have gotten, if they had stayed healthy, maybe would have gotten late round draft picks. I was by the time I was a senior, and our varsity team was so good that I wasn't getting a ton of playing time, but I grew up my whole life playing baseball. And the only time I've found there's 2 things, comedy is competitive in a similar way to sports. And it's also there's a degree at the level where it starts to matter, where you're I could go play. When you're playing Little League, it's we just want to win. I don't care. When you're well, maybe one of us could go, I could go play community college baseball. I don't want this guy to be pitching this day. I want to be pitching this day. You know what I mean? Was there any of that in college, or did you guys just have enough spots? 4 first-round pick pitchers on that 2003 Rice team. Is there any part of you that's rooting against those guys at any point? Your career's over. You could say it now.
I maybe Wade Townsend, but we had a big rivalry too, kind of because we both were competing for the same starting job.
Sure.
And then I got it, he didn't, and then he took my job, and because then you think he's taking your job, and instead of thinking, cool, I have this new opportunity, and right. That's the positive mindset. But in all reality, you're not getting a starting job anymore. You're going to the bullpen, you're becoming one of those guys. And I would say this, he was the only one that I think I competed with. And sure. I kind of was dude, I wouldn't mind if you go out there and suck a little bit, man. Well, especially maybe during a spring training, a college fall ball, right. Okay, man, I don't mind if you'd go out there and suck and let me go win a job, because I know I'm going to be good. I just also need you to kind of suck a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't ever wish injuries. I've never wished an injury upon anybody. But maybe a hangnail or something, go suck it.
Blister, maybe a blister. That seems innocuous enough.
Right, but we had the 4 first rounders, but we also had a third rounder, 2 fifth rounders, a 7th rounder, and a 9th rounder, something ridiculous. So you start going down the line.
There was a second rounder in the 03 draft.
Vinny Sinisi.
Yeah,
but he got the most money out of all of us, because he was supposed to be like a top 10, top of 5 pick, but he had
Gotcha.
Boris. And so he slipped to the second round of the Rangers.
Baseball draft is so silly.
Absolutely. And so it was our team was ridiculous. The pitching staff, I'll put that up against anybody. I don't care who you got. I'll put our pitching staff against anybody in the country any single day. Dude, Neiman was blowing like Humber was our number one because he was so rock steady.
Sure.
But Neiman sitting at 6'10", throwing 100 miles an hour, like, go suck it. Like, Townsend was throwing 90, 97, 98 with a nasty hook. Umber would get up to 95 and just be spotting on the corners. And I'm coming out of the bullpen throwing 95 to 100. Like, I don't care. I don't care who you are. Like, we shoved.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys were great. It's funny because I think that college baseball players, so I played high school baseball, but I had like other interests and stuff. College baseball players specifically are some of the least empathetic people you'll meet in your life.
Yeah.
And so like the idea of competing with another college baseball player and losing the job to another college baseball player is an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely. And because there's kind of a college atmosphere, right? You kind of don't care, right? You don't, you kind of like, you kind of feel invincible and all this stuff. Like, yeah, you put those guys in a locker room. I think Wayne Graham did an incredible job, though, of making it competitive while making it a team. And the best thing that could have ever happened to us was in 2002. We're like the number one team in the country. We go to the College World Series. We lose to Texas on, dude, some of the most crazy plays in the world. And then the last play of the game, I mean, we have a runner on second, down by 1, ground ball to Omar Quintanilla at third base. Ball flies off his glove into the corner, like behind our third base coach, and where Wayne Graham was. Our runner's rounding third base. Vinny Sinisi's rounding third base. He one-hands it, dives to his right, falling down, throws the ball. Wayne Graham falls down. It almost hits him in the head. It nicks Sinisi's shoulder as the catcher catches it with a huge collision at home plate, and that's how we lose the game.
Damn.
And then we get walked off on a grand slam the next day against Notre Dame, and that's how we lose. So we're taking this team that is number one in the country, and we're just pissed, and we're fired up, and we know at least like there's no longer the competition, is more of just a big fuck you to everybody else. We are not, like, we're done. We're done with this whole thing. And we kind of went in. I mean, one time I think we won 33 games in a row.
Yeah.
Something like that, 33 games in a row. We were like 1 or 2 games away from the all-time record. And so we kind of stuck it to everybody else. We were pissed.
Yeah. This is my weird fun connection to that story is I played fall ball for Grant Garrido, who was Augie Garrido's brother, who coached Texas in those
Was
years.
he a son of a bitch too? Was he a...
He was a lot nicer than the stories I've heard about Augie, I will say. It seemed like they must have gotten very different experiences as children. So I looked it up today. I know Augie passed away in 2018. I don't know if Grant Garrido is still around, but he was a really nice guy. We had two like blended. It was I played on we didn't have a lot of guys in my area that played traveling ball, so we just all played Little League still. So we were like a full high school state qualifying team in high school, and then we would go play another game that week or 2 games that week against like everybody else couldn't make their high school team, and they were on this Little League team. So we were just destroying people. And the fall ball was like even more diluted talent because people were playing basketball and wrestling and stuff like that. And so yeah, we were the time I spent with Grant Garrido, that guy thought I was like a god, but so I have nothing to complain about with him. He was really sweet dude. I'm not he actually at the time didn't even have anyone on the team. He just like loved baseball so much that he would coach this fall ball. And I mean, obviously loved being around the game. So
that's funny.
It was cool. The other thing about your career that I found interesting is, because like I said, I've just been aware of you for so long that I didn't realize you spent 1 year in every stop except Seattle. Because to me, I was like, oh, this brief time you spent in Seattle, but that was Seattle was the only place. You actually spent 3 years in Seattle, or on the roster. Obviously, 1 year you were recovering from Tommy John surgery. But 3 years was the longest time you spent on a big league roster with one team. Because comedy has a lot of travel, so I think about like You probably didn't have a family back then, I imagine. When did you start your family?
We started my family while I was in Seattle. So I married my
Okay.
wife in '08. Andrea, freaking awesome, my rock dude. Like she's a rock star.
Hell yeah.
Talking about marrying the right wife, the baseball wife. She's it.
Yes.
Like she's a killer.
It takes a lot to yeah.
It takes a ton, and baseball's glamorous for the guys that get to stay in one place for a long time. It's a very
Yeah.
glamorous. When you're a reliever that plays for 14 teams, it tends to be a very unglamorous. It's as glamorous as unglamorous could be.
Sure.
And then so Seattle 2010, I had my son David Zachary, so DZ in 10, and then 12 I ended up having my second son when I was with the Yankees. I was hurt. So I actually wasn't ever hurt. Tommy John wasn't what I was on the DL for, really. It was I ended up having a hip surgery. And so my hip, and so a lot of people go, "Oh, you're Tommy John, Tommy John." I recovered fine from Tommy John. My hip blew me up. And my first game back from my hip was when I blew my elbow. So my arm was great, and I actually I don't think I would have ever had Tommy John, but you take my hip out of it, and then I ended up missing that year, and then I basically missed the whole next year because of just complications. And then the Tommy John happened.
Yeah.
It was a whole lot of suck. And
Sure.
I loved my time in Seattle. I had so much fun in Seattle, and I wish that would have never happened. And it just, man, it broke my heart.
It's got to be kind of a blessing in disguise to have the time. So 2010, you said 2010 when you had your youngest or your oldest, I mean?
Yes.
So you obviously that year you pitch a full year in Seattle essentially, but then to have the time not playing baseball essentially the next 2 years, I'm sure it didn't feel like a blessing at the time. We had our first kid 6 months before the pandemic, and our next kid we had, this is not going to sound like a blessing. I got laid off 2.5 months before we had our second kid.
Oh.
I got to spend so much time at home with them that I would have never spent if I had not had those things happen. And we were like fine financially, so it wasn't like as stressful as that might sound. But yeah, you got to spend like years that baseball players probably don't get to spend with their kids, I imagine.
Absolutely. And that was the blessing of it is you're there, you get to spend every day. Now I was hyper focused on wanting to be healthy and being back. And the time with the Yankees was a little tough because I basically sat in a hotel room or a little, couple month rental apartment building, in Tampa and rehabbing every single day. That kind of sucks. But when you get to spend all that time with the family, it was absolutely amazing. It was like the pandemic. It was bad for a lot of people, incredible for us because we got to reunite as a family and relook at our entire relationship as a family unit and start over. And it was that was special for us. But what I hit on the last question, I totally forgot the travel side. We used to have boxes in our garage, like 8 giant like U-Haul boxes, those huge like Home Depot boxes, and we had everything set up, like bedroom 1, bedroom 2, kitchen, everything you could possibly need. We basically made like this is what we would just ship it to wherever I'm at, and then repack those boxes, ship them back home, and then ship them to the next spot. And I get traded. Cool, we're gonna ship it over there, and that became such a routine that like getting traded, signing with new teams just became such like business. It's like it became so normalized, and it sucked because I always wanted to be with that one team and be there. And if I felt like if I could have redone anything, we'd have figured out how to be in Seattle, been healthy, and I think I would have gotten to spend the rest of my career there. I would have been, or at least 5 years, 6 years, and kind of make a name for myself and have some familiarity with one place, but it just wasn't, didn't turn out to be like that.
I had this conversation a couple of years ago with Andres Gonzalez. He's a professional golfer. And in golf, you get to see everybody's like earnings. Everybody gets to see everybody's earnings, which is not just other players, but like, mooks like me that can go look at your, how do you feel about this? I don't know how to say this without making it sound like I'm an asshole. The most money you ever made in a season was the year you did not play for the Seattle Mariners because you were recovering from your hip surgery.
Yeah.
Is that how does that like I mean, I'm sure the checks cashed just fine. I'm sure going to the bank was nice, being able to pay your bills was nice, all that stuff. But like, how does that fit into your like, I guess like your the lore of your career? Because that's obviously not what you dream about. You got to live so much of the dream. You got to become a professional baseball player, play at a very high level. You were essentially an all-star caliber closer in Seattle. You didn't make the all-star team, but those are all-star numbers that you put up in Seattle. And then the 1 year that you're like, this is the year, you spend it rehabbing an injury.
I let's thank Andrew Bailey for not making that all-star team. I want to choke him out because in 09 at the deadline, or not at the deadline, at the all-star break, I had pretty much better numbers across the board, and Oakland needed one dude, and they decided, oh well, this kid who happens to be a closer and happens to be really good, by the way,
sure,
might as well make the team. I'm like, come on, man, just somebody, give me a shortstop, give me somebody. But I mean, don't get me wrong, he ended up being rookie of the year and stuff. He deserved it, but would have been an all-star. That would have been pretty cool. It hurts. It hurts a lot. It's frustrating. Sure. I'm not going to complain. The money's still cash. Like, none of those check bounce. That would have been funny, though. That would have been really funny if the one check bounce. I probably would have deserved it too. I felt like I was robbing the team. I felt like I was robbing the city. It hurt when I signed. Again, a lot of the times when you're signing arbitration deals, especially you're signing for what you've done, not necessarily what you're going to do. And that sucks. As a free agent, you're signing for what you're going to do. As an arbitration player, it's all about basically what you've done. And I pitched at all-star levels. And that was getting paid for my all-star level. That after that next season would have been paid for everything moving forward, right? Your free agency after that is like, all right, we're signing you not for what you've done, but what you're going to do. But I never valued on that, man. It sucked. Like I had a little hip pain. And then we never checked it out all winter. This is what people don't know is I actually missed the last 2 weeks of the 10 season with hip pain. And the team thought it was oblique. I didn't know any better. We're 2 months into the off season and it still hurts. And I start playing catch. I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do. This still hurts. I cough and it's a pain. I run. I can't run. I can't throw a baseball. So then we start getting it checked out. If I would have had surgery at the end of the year, if we would have gotten MRI, anything, I would have been fully healthy for 2011. And I would have been walking into 2011 100% healthy player with that contract. Without even a question, I would have missed zero time. I would have been ready to rock, throwing 100 miles an hour. We didn't. The team didn't, and I didn't. And I'm going to take partial blame because I wanted to come back. I wanted to be healthy. I didn't want to be hurt. I don't want to have surgery, but we didn't know. Right. And then once we had the MRI, then the team said, okay, well, it's a IT band that's inflamed. And I said, I don't think so. And I went and got checked out on my own. And that's how we found out that I had a major, major, major hip problem. And we ended up having surgery a week later and going through all that. And so January 3rd or something like that, I'm watching my son walk for the first time in a surgery bed in Vail, Colorado, which should have happened in September. And so and I'm not blaming the team, but hey, man, I got misdiagnosed for a couple months, right?
Yeah, well, and especially to have it happen, you said like a week. They were misdiagnosing you up to the start of the season, essentially, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, January, I ended up having surgery. And then I was told I can make a comeback and be ready to go by basically first month of the season. So I was like, dude, that's our timeline. Let's go. That timeline was about 3 months too fast is the problem. And everybody I talked to afterwards said, you're crazy. What were you doing? I'm like, well, I felt good. The teams told me I just keep going. And so I think we all learned a lesson, a very valuable lesson, and I don't get that one back.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sucks. I mean, not to bring the mood down a lot, but man, I should have been closing ball games. Brandon League ended up closing, doing great, getting a 3-year, $21 million deal after that year with the Dodgers. I wish things were a little different where we just diagnosed it earlier. And that's when I went into the front office with the Blue Jays. That was my goal, was let's do better for the athletes. Let's do better for the players. Let's develop them better. Let's catch these things and actually like catch a little earlier so we're not paying the same price I did.
Yeah, now that you remind me of that, Brandon League became my wife's favorite baseball player, and she did not know what position he played. So I really wish you would have. I really wish you would have stayed in Seattle. What does that next season look like? So you end up signing with the Yankees. Are the Mariners, do they offer you at all, or is there mutual interest, or is it, roster invite, minor league invite to camp, or what?
My interest was 100%. I want to be a Seattle Mariner, and their interest was you're hurt, and we're not going to pay you what it would be to be a Seattle Mariner. It was basically we'll give you like a basically minor league like this. You'll rehab here. If I remember right, I don't even think it was a big league minimum. I don't think it was even anything like that. The Yankees came in right away and said, well, big league deal with a ton of incentives. Dude, the amount of incentives I had on this deal, that it was insane. It was like, we're going to give you $500,000, whatever the minimum is. But if you pitch like 10 games, it bumps it. And you pitch like another 10. Boom. If you get games finished. And then all those incentives roll into the next contract, the next year. So it was a 2-year deal.
Oh, wow.
So all of those things, if I would have just pitched like 10, 20 games, I'm making like crazy good money. And then the next year I had a ton of incentives. So that like, it was like a multiplier. It's like when you're watching a game, it's like, or you're playing like Candy Crush or something, you start hitting the multipliers. That was my contract with the Yankees, and my agent and I were looking at this going, dude, this is a really legit good free agent contract. It starts out tiny, but build if he goes, if you're healthy, and that's what Cashman told me straight up, because if you're healthy, you're going to be paid like the all-star closer you were. And I'm like, done. Like, not even thinking about this.
Yeah. Then 24 pitches.
You're right.
What is that like? Because I mean, you're obviously coming off. I've never had an injury in baseball that was that severe. I did. I was 2.5 weeks out. Well, what became 2.5 weeks out at the time. We thought it was 6 weeks out from having our second kid, and I tore my. I got a bucket handle tear on my meniscus and a partial ACL tear, which I didn't know at the time. All I knew was I couldn't bend my knee straight. And that's the most severe injury I've ever had. When you're like, was your 24th pitch the pitch that you knew? Because some guys will go out and try to throw a couple after that. Was that the pitch you knew you had torn your UCL, or what? Like, I guess tell me about that.
Wait, so which year is this?
Did you tear your Tommy John was with the Yankees?
No, Tommy John was with the Mariners.
Oh, okay. So I see. Okay. Wait, so what happens with the Yankees then?
Okay, so no, I only threw. Okay, so with the Mariners, I'm coming back from the hip surgery. I'm throwing. I throw in my very first rehab game, and I felt the pain, and then I kept pitching about 3 more rehab starts, and then that was it.
Got it.
Then I get to the Yankees, and I'm coming back, and I had a little, like you start throwing off-speed pitches and sliders and stuff at Tommy John, and you're rehabbing. It just didn't feel right, so we took just a little longer. I get back, and I think we're in Toronto. I get my call up. I'm coming back, and I only threw 24 pitches because that was the rest of the season. That was like late September.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And
okay.
My second pitch, I gave up a home run to JP Aaronsma, son of a bitch. How about that? You're coming back from 2 years of DL time, and your second pitch, some dude just jumps you on a fastball, hits it out. But I got everything. I think I had a hit, a walk, a strikeout, a home run. I got everything in there on one outing. And then but they were right in the pennant chase in 2012. So I didn't get another opportunity. I got warmed up a couple more times, but dude, they were going for the World Series, and I didn't make the playoff roster. I get it.
Yeah, that's rough too. You lived in, so you. I know you just via Twitter, basically. I don't know what, it's probably me trying to get you to do my podcast in the past that led to all this, is my guess. You followed me for a little while. You've been very, by the way, generous. You've like tweeted out when I've had some comedy shows. You've tweeted that out. You've retweeted jokes of mine that I was like, fuck, watch out, Major League Baseball Network. Don't tell. I hope they don't see this retweet because David Aardsma could be
If it's good. It's good. I gotta recognize it.
Yeah, you might be co-hosting this podcast if you keep tweeting my shit. But the Seattle to me, so I realized why I thought you lived in New York is because you played for the Long Island Ducks.
Yeah.
And I assume to me, and I hope you don't take this. You seem like a guy from Long Island, like on you're like you feel like a blue collar guy to me on social media, and I don't mean this as an insult. And then also, like, I think you have from what I've seen, you have politics that are somewhere in the center 80%, like not super right, not super left. To me, Seattle seems like a place where you might not enjoy yourself. Seattle proper, anyway. I know there's a lot of. I live in the area. There's a lot of stuff around there. Where did you live in Seattle? Like, what part of Seattle or around Seattle did you live in?
Right downtown.
Oh wow.
I want to say it was, if I remember right, 8th and like right by the hospital.
Okay.
I want to say I'm really this is bothering me because I'm like master on maps and I really like bothers me right now a lot. And so I want to say it was like 8th and Madison.
Okay.
8th and Madison. I loved it. I had so much fun. So I stayed there the first 2 years. And then my last year when I was hurt, I was at the Pan Pacific. Like they had like a little condos there. Like I knew like tried something different because the place we were at no longer had the place to stay at. But yeah, so 8th and Madison, I loved it. Yeah, definitely more middle. Here's the way I look at it. I don't care. Are you a good person? Are you a good person? And then if the politics end up being suffocating either way, I don't want anything to do with you. It's like, dude, like just be a good human being, and that's how I value people, and yeah, that's the way I look at it.
So there's in Seattle specifically recently, there's a lot of like people talking about the homeless situation a lot. Yeah. And I always am like, did you guys not ever go to Seattle in 2019? Like, did you never step foot in the city in 2019? Most of the people because I'm sure, well, I looked up at roughly where you lived. I'm looking it up. Like, if you're walking did you ever walk to the ballpark?
I walked to the ballpark was probably a little too much.
Okay.
But dude, I'm one of those, like, when I live in a city, if I travel to a city, anything like that, we're walking everywhere. So yeah. I've pretty much walked every square inch of that. And like, I probably got a little walking, when you get a little bit down by like the Smith Tower and stuff, like it got a little questionable, but like,
yeah.
And I'm there with my wife too. And so like, maybe even then, like it was a little dicey then around that area, but still like wasn't bad, but I walked everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's my thing is like people talk about Seattle being like this, going through this like, and by the way, there's problems. I'm not saying there's not problems, and I would not want to live there at this point in my life. I'm like, I live in Tacoma. I'm very happy being not in the mix of all that stuff. But people pretend or are ignorant to the point that it's like that something changed drastically. And there's obviously like throughout the pandemic there were some things that were a lot different. But yeah, so. What were the things that you like to do? You got an off day at home, which is probably not often, obviously, as a baseball player, especially as a closer. You didn't even get the luxury. This is where you fucked up not being a starter. Because if you're a starter, you could take 3 days off. You could go out to dinner with your wife, have a couple glasses of wine, come to the ballpark. No big deal. But you made the mistake of pitching. You could be called in any game.
So what? Okay, you give me an off day in Seattle. One of our favorite things in Seattle, what we did on off days as a team.
Yeah, where are you eating? Where are you drinking? Where are you?
Well, we would take a boat out. We would take a boat out on Lake Washington. We loved that. That was so much fun. And the thing about it, I got to tell everybody, with the Mariners, the thing that was different than anything else, and especially in 2009, we were the most like unique unit of ball players I'd ever seen. I'd never been on a team, and this is not normal. 25 dudes that just loved hanging out with each other.
That's cool.
We would roll into a city. The entire bullpen would go out together. The starting pitch staff would go out together, and the entire lineup would go out together. That is not normal. And then what would happen is we would all usually end up in the same place, for after dinner, for some drinks or something like that. We'd be 25 guys in a bar, not like 7. We'd be like 25 and just having a drink, not going crazy, just chilling. And just we would come in and the entire pitching staff would go out to dinner, the entire like hitters, and we'd end up at the same restaurant. And it was
cool.
Unplanned, on anything. And I remember one night, like literally we're like 25 guys hanging out in the same restaurant, like 2 massive long tables. So that was always cool. So like I remember every off day we'd do something as a staff. The whole bullpen went out to like Washington one day. That was so much fun. But I'm hanging out in Seattle. I got my wife. It's 2010, 2009. We're going down to Pike's Place Market, but there's a little crumpet shop right down there that we would go hang out in. I don't know if it's still open or not, but it was like so much. It was such a cute little shop that we'd hang out there in the morning. To one of my favorite bars that's closed now. It was right on Lake Washington. And I'm trying to remember. It was a really cool little bar. I remember the exact location of it was. They had one in Bellevue too.
I'm trying to pull it up.
I know it's not making great for like podcast like stuff, but I remember I'm going to say this, and my wife's really cool about it. Like most beautiful women ever. My wife was I remember too. My Andrea, my wife would be like, "Wow, like this is like," she goes, "It's just gorgeous. Like you want to just come here and just look."
That's a good wife in every regard. If anyone's coming out the winner of this podcast, it's your wife. She's coming out looking great in this podcast.
Oh, like dude, she's a rock star, man. And then at night, was it Pesos?
Oh, Paseo, the sandwich place that you're talking about?
No, it was in it was like it was a Mexican restaurant that would turn into like a nightclub down what is this, like uptown area? Like Queen Anne area. It was like a nightclub bar that was just, I know it's closed now.
Peso's Kitchen and Lounge, it would appear.
I think, yeah, dude, that place was rocking.
Is that your scene? Rockin'. What do you like out of a place? Well, I guess then versus now. Are you like a loud music guy? Do you want hip hop? Do you want rock and roll, country?
Well, so this was perfect. So what we would do is we would get done with the game, and it would be 11 o'clock at night, right? And we'd be like, all right, well, guys, let's grab some dinner, let's grab something, right? So we would all go there, and like I remember in 2010, like I'd bring my son in a stroller, like it was like, and they're like, yeah, no problem, we got a table in the back, let's go. And this bitch would be like, boom, 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 and my son would just be awake and just happy as can be, hanging out, and all the everyone would be like, yeah, like hanging out with him. At night, like you know what, it felt like it was rock music, not crazy loud, but like a good vibe, and we could eat dinner. So we'd have like a beautiful like steak and just enjoy kind of like being out without being out. And that's what I liked about it. But nowadays things have changed a little bit. Like I actually, they haven't at all. We went to Vegas, we went out to a club, and that until 4 a.m. We loved it. Like generally though,
you and your wife did this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like a couple weeks ago. I dig a great wine though, and I love a good wine vibe. Like if you can give me a cool like wine vibe, like music going on, like upbeat, but like serving great wine, that's where like my go-to is. But I have this still like little vibe in me. I want to go out and like go like just kill it. Like
I have none of that. I'm so jealous of that. I have none of that. I'm such a bummer when it comes to that. I'm going out with my wife tonight. We're going to find the quietest brewery we can find and just drink a couple beers and talk. And I will love that, but it's all like I'm not. Yeah, I got nothing. I got nothing left in the tank for loud music and fist pumping.
Dude, I want to fist pump all night. We had so much fun in Vegas. Like I don't know, but you can't do it every night. And
yeah,
but I kind of like all those little different vibes. But I still have that little like, dude, like whenever we go to Vegas, I'm like, let's go. Let's do this. I'm not a big gambler and stuff like that, so I like the entertainment, and it's good to go out, man.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not digging. I'm not trashing though a good beer, good brewery. Like my buddy from Boston like owns incredible brewery up in Boston, Trillium. And so like dude, like go out to his brewery and go hang out with him and his family. Like I love it. We actually, back when he was brewing that stuff, do you know Trillium?
Yeah, I'm aware of the brewer. I'm a big beer nerd too. As much of a baseball nerd as I am, I'm an equally big beer nerd.
We were in his house, in his apartment, he was brewing that stuff out of his bathroom when back in Boston. And
it's like Prohibition days.
Absolutely, doing it out of his bathroom. And I remember so we made an Aardsma ale, and cool. Little citrus in there, a little orange zest in there, and I remember making it with him. And like, I'm like, dude, this is the best beer I've ever had in my life. Like, best beer ever. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about maybe doing it. And like, he's like everybody's telling me I should do it. I'm like, no, like, I want to invest right now. And this dude, smartest man I've ever known. One of the smartest. It was Breslow and him are like right there. And he tells me, ask me one day, do you want to invest? And he's like, I'm ready to do it. And I go, yes. I go, but I need to own part of it. And he goes, nope. He goes, damn. And I go, I'm not the bank of Aardsma. I'm the investment group. And he goes, I got enough money just by giving out. He goes, I'll pay people back, but I'm not giving out 1%. And I go, wow, good for you, dude. Like, nothing against you. Great job, man.
So you've started a couple businesses yourself, or not, if not started. Actually, I'm curious about Top Velocity because we're running out of time. There's a modern thing. Working out for pitchers has changed a ton in the last 25 years. Also, the data that pitchers get, the kinetic data they get, the all the stuff related to pitching mechanics and maximizing velocity and spin rate and all this stuff. There's a lot of data. I've actually seen you talk a little bit about not obsessing about that stuff in youth baseball, which I respect a lot. But obviously a place like this, Top Velocity, is going to gear towards people who are competitive baseball players that want to get better, which are usually going to be college or high school players, I would imagine. I don't know what the clientele is, but you are quoted as someone who says that this company saved your career. So you're not a founder of Top Velocity. Is that right?
I'm not a founder. I would say I'm partner now, but I'm not a founder.
President is what something on the internet says is president, right?
I own Top Velocity Pro, which is a partnership with Top Velocity.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I am also kind of partnered with Top Velocity itself.
Gotcha.
And Brent Porcio, who started it, man, just incredible. Absolutely, like everything that went wrong from that Mariners time when I got hurt to the Yankees and Braves, Yankees and Mets. And my stuff was getting worse and worse and worse every single year. I started training like this. I went to them and changed my entire career. I was back in the big leagues with the Braves. I was healthy from there on out. It only lasted one more year because the next year I didn't get picked up I got minor leagued and it just didn't work out after that. But my stuff was incredible. My pitching was incredible. It just didn't work out for me. But I started business here. So I'm training these guys. I'm training middle schoolers all the way through pro guys. And to me, I look at it as like, yeah, I just want you to be the best version of yourself possible. I do it through pitch data. We lift, we throw. It's a lot of focus on velocity, but honestly, it's a lot of more focus on how to move right. And so I got these kids that are like 12 years old, and it's like, let's move right. Let's get your body moving correctly. And we're seeing velocity gains, but like, okay, at 12, who cares? But honestly, they're getting healthy and they're feeling great and they're getting velocity. But like, the idea of that is let's just move really good. And I'm the first person to ever show them that. That's the problem, is a lot of times I'm the first person to ever show them how they're moving compared to other guys. Like, these are some red flags. Let's correct this.
Yeah, even like I remember seeing a still picture of myself like near the release of the ball. And it changed. I was like, oh shit, I can see everything I'm doing wrong from this one. Getting video when I was a kid was impossible. Oh, this is exciting.
Come back. I gotta show you that.
All right, this is exciting. I don't know if we're getting a nude picture or we could be getting a whole.
You have to sign up for my OnlyFans at the DA53. I tried to hide the name just in case I'm like
53 is centimeters, which is I think still very big.
I'll take it.
Yeah, we can convert centimeters into inches while David's gone.
Just not the 53 millimeters. Damn
Yeah.
it. You know what's funny? You said that. That's what changed my career. Was a still picture.
Oh wow.
So it happened for you, and I'm looking at this right now, and you see my back leg.
Yeah.
See how it's like flat and not like pointed forward?
Yes.
That picture on this St. Louis Cardinals, Memphis Cardinals baseball card changed my career because I was having groin injuries. So 2008, I had groin injury, 2010 groin injury, and then I had the hip injury, and then I had to have groin surgery. This year, I ended up having groin surgery, and that's when like my career was over with. And I looked at this picture, this baseball card, and then I started looking at every other baseball card of all of our other pitchers, and I went, "Why is my leg different?
Mm-hmm.
Why is my back leg different?" And I started searching the internet, started going crazy trying to find out why is my back leg different. And I've had a bunch of leg injuries. Everyone else doing this. And that's when I found Top Velocity because they were the only person to ever answer that question. Why is your leg different? And then they had a solution for it. And so and then I was like, I'm buying into this because this stuff works, man. It was absolutely incredible. Changed my life.
Do you think with all and this is the last thing, you've been very generous with your time. We used to have these guys throwing 150, 160 pitches, long careers, throwing 300 innings a year pretty routinely. And then as training and nutrition and fitness and the knowledge we have of how to move your body has changed and gotten better, the innings have dropped off. And to me, this has always seemed somewhat perplexing. And the two things that are possible to me is one, guys are throwing harder, it's harder on your arm. Two, they're throwing more breaking balls, and that's harder on your arm. Is there anything other than those things, or is there what could possibly be causing this as we evolve?
It's the simplest thing in the world, and you've already nailed it. It's the simplest thing. Like, we're trying so hard to answer this, and no one just wants to fucking say it. We're trying to throw the living fuck out of the ball every single time.
Yeah.
And back in the day, and you threw it 90%, and then you let it go for 4 pitches. So back when I had a podcast, I had Kurt Schilling on, and Kurt said we would throw 120 pitches, and 5 of them would be as hard as I could. And he goes, if I ever had to throw more than 5 as hard as I could, I'm done, and it's a shitty outing. He goes, and I'm 5 and dive, and it's a bad outing. That's the worst day I could have. Our pitchers now are walking out first pitch, throwing as hard as they fucking can with the best stuff they can. I'm not just throwing a slider for a strike because that's not good enough anymore. And we're evaluating guys from the big leagues all the way down to college, to high school, to earlier than that on their stuff and not their ability to get out. And so we're looking at it going, well, that one slider wasn't good enough. We need to get that better. Like, actually, it was an 0-0 strike, and it's perfect.
Sure.
And then, like, throw the good one when it's 0-2. But we're throwing 0-2 sliders, 0-2 curveballs, 0-2 changeups, 0-2 fastballs when it's 0-0 counts all the time. And no shit, these guys are fucking hurt. Like, how, like, you can't do that for 120 pitches. And when I hear, who was it George Kirby or Logan Gilbert talked about, like, I'm going 5 innings, like, why should I go more?
Right.
I don't want to misquote it, but something like that around the ideas of, like, I'm only going to go 5. Like, why am I going to try to go 9 innings? Because we've grown it. Like, we've developed these guys that have to do that. And then mindset wise is, why should they throw hard? Like, why should they throw 9 innings when we told them every single level of the way, you 5 and dive? And as hard as the best 5 and dive you could possibly give, but 5 and dive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard. I got to go listen to that Schilling. Well, actually, I did. I will say the bullpen podcast is hard to find these days, but
Yes.
yeah, I'm happy to see you're continuing. I wanted to talk a little bit about radio, but I don't want to take up too much of your time because it's really cool to see you working at MLB Network Radio. Thank you for all of your time, and maybe I'm gonna try to make some trips to Arizona soon. Actually, probably in the winter. And if you're still there in the winter, I'll let you into a comedy show for free with your wife, and maybe we'll fist pump after if you're down for that.
We'll get a beer after.
Hell yeah!
In a nice, calm brewery.
Well, I'll do as the Romans do. You know, as they say, when in Rome, I'll go fist pump with you. Who cares?
Yes, we're going to Old Town. Let's do this.
Hell yeah! Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to play this music. I'm so bad at producing this show. All right. All right, dude.